Norfolk has always been a special place for observing wildlife. The diversity of habitats attract a wide variety of birds throughout the seasons, from rarities to resident breeders. The improving land management is encouraging the return of declining species, such as avocets, marsh harriers, and the bittern. During the spring and autumn passage, migrants from the continent are sometimes affected by inclement weather, or just pause near the coast to feed and rest. Large flocks of geese gather on the well-managed grazing marshes. Huge flocks of waders fly into the wetland areas. And unusual visitors from as far afield as North America visit a humble back garden. At North Deans, on the beach at Great Yarmouth, there is a small colony of approximately 200 pairs of little terns, which forms 10% of the British population. The local volunteers and wardens monitor and protect the colony from both vandalism and predators.
This adult clearly shows the long yellow bill with a black tip that distinguishes it from other terns in the British Isles.
The area fenced off also allows protection for other breeding birds. This young ringed plover calls for the attention of its parents. Horsey Gap is a quiet sandy beach habitat where terns can clearly be seen diving for fish just offshore. The grazing land around Horsey is also rich in a variety of bird life. Great Yarmouth Beach is one of the best places in the country to see Mediterranean gulls. Their numbers have steadily increased, with as many as 100 individuals regularly seen on the beach outside the breeding season.
They can be identified by the almost white wingtips in adult plumage and their thick red bill.
Waxham is another tranquil beach along the east coast to see Norfolk wildlife at its best. The pups in the group are approximately 6 months old and are almost as big as their parents.
Common seals have smaller, blunt noses and are paler in colour than Atlantic seals, who look more streamlined.
Watch out for breeding ringed plover, as the stony beach is the ideal habitat for this small wader. In May 1987, a pair of slender-billed gulls were found at Cley next the sea on the North Scrape. They were present for 3 days, but disappeared on the Friday evening, to the disappointment of the twitchers that gathered there the following morning. Coincidentally, 13 years later, a second pair also came to Cley next the sea. This footage shows the occurrence of the second pair.
In summer, they have a pinkish tinge on the breast and chest area.
The glaucous gull is almost as big as a great black-backed gull. It is normally an annual winter visitor to the UK. They are regularly found at rubbish tips or coastal areas. This particular bird was filmed at Great Yarmouth Harbour in February and March 2008. Common gulls are not as common as their name implies. It is often mistaken for the larger herring gull, but is more delicate, with a finer bill and no red spot. When in flight, black wedges can be seen on the underside of its wingtips. Sea Palling is a very popular beach with tourists in the summer. The man-made rock reefs offer its residents shelter from the harsh North Sea. Terns can often be seen roosting on rocks in summer, and the rare lesser-crested tern was recorded here in 2004. Sanderlings feed on the small worm and crustacea. They scurry along the beach in small flocks and seem almost oblivious to the world around them. They have contrasting white plumage in winter compared to the red and black markings during the summer months. The black-headed gull likes to spend time in groups where they can quarrel noisily. The blackhead actually isn't black, but is more of a chocolate brown. In the winter, their head is white with black areas over the ears. They are commonly known as seagulls. However, this is a mistake as they are mostly found inland. Juvenile black-headed gulls have a gingery brown mantle, which they gradually lose over a 2-year period. During the autumn and spring months, Snettisham Beach is host to thousands upon thousands of waders, grouping together to feed on the rich mudflats and scrapes of the Wash. The prevalent species are knot, redshank, oystercatcher, curlew, godwits, ringed plover and lapwing. The area behind Snettisham Beach becomes an overflow for the mass of birds, and huge flocks fill the sky as they move from the mudflats to the gravel pits to roost. It is one of nature's most awesome spectacles and is not to be missed. Little egrets first bred in the UK in Dorset in 1996 and are now a common sight on the scrapes, dikes and grazing marshes of Norfolk. This little grebe or dabchick actively feeds in the gravel pits. And a greenshank scurries along the water's edge. Mudflats and harbours, like this one at Wells, are an important habitat for birds in Norfolk. The flats are a rich source of food, with worms and crustacea being plentiful. It's always worth keeping an eye out for unusual divers during the winter months. The black-throated diver is one of the rarities to watch out for in coastal harbours. They breed in Scotland and winter around the British coast, but sometimes find their way into inland waterways where the sea conditions are too rough for feeding. Breeden Water and Burney Marshes are the most important sites in the Broads for breeding waders. During the winter months, as many as 100,000 birds flock here to feed and roost. Species include widgeon, pink-footed goose, oystercatchers, golden plovers, redshank and lapwings. And the best time to view the wildlife is at high tide. During the summer months, the estuary is fairly quiet, with breeding common terns actively feeding their young. This lesser yellowleg spent several weeks at Thornham Creek on the North Norfolk coast in January 2007. This bird is an occasional visitor from America and is fairly easy to spot. As its name suggests, it has bright yellow legs. The rugged cliffs at Trimmingham are home to meadow pipits and gives a good vantage point over the North Sea. The dunes along the east coast are good places to see spring migrants. They often stop on their passage for a few days to feed after their long migration during April and May. Watch out for redstarts and wheatears. At sea Palling, the dune area becomes a sea wall and provides a sheltered area great for birds at all times of the year. Linnets, whitethroats, wagtails, shrikes, wheatears, windchats and stonechats are all attracted by the gorse and insects. The desert wheatear is a scarce visitor to the UK, with only 76 occurrences up to 2005. A fine plumage bird spent several days at Waxham in October 2007 and posed for the many birdwatchers who made the trek to see it. This tawny pipit arrived in Norfolk in May 2008 between Waxham and Horsey. Can be distinguished from other pipits as it has no streaks on its underparts, and its overall appearance is a buffy sandy color and is slightly larger than the native meadow pipit. Swallows arrive in March from Africa and take up nest sites near open water and farm buildings. In spring, you can often see large groups roosting on telegraph wires after their long migration. In late summer, they gather in groups over areas such as reed beds to roost before their long journey south.
Greenfinch males like to find a prominent position to sing out in the open to attract a mate in the spring.
In 1997, an adult Siberian meadow bunting was found wintering in the dunes at Old Hunstanton. It was assumed to be an escaped cage bird due to its tameness. Because of this doubt, it has not been accepted on the British list. The sea wall along the North Norfolk coast is continually changing during the winter months. With every high tide, the banks of shingle erode away, allowing salt water onto the marshes. In the winter of 2008, there was a large flock of snow buntings, with several Lapland buntings along the North Norfolk coast. Snow buntings breed in the mountains of Scotland and northern Europe, and Lapland buntings breed further north in open tundra, throughout northern Europe and Canada. These turnstones are constantly moving around and shifting stones with their beaks to see what lurks underneath. They're in their winter plumage. During the summer months, the head becomes black and white, and the mantle becomes more reddy brown. Norfolk is crisscrossed with drainage dikes that are a rich habitat for all kinds of wildlife, including birds, dragonflies, and mammals like the water voles, which have increased with improving water quality. Spotted flycatchers are often seen sitting out in the open on a branch. They breed in woodland, parks and gardens, and do use an open-fronted nest box if one is available. In the autumn, they migrate back to tropical Africa south of the equator. The pied wagtail is common in many habitats, but likes school playgrounds, car parks and lawns. They often like to roost in large groups and sometimes are found in some odd locations, like the Debenham store in the centre of Norwich. This individual favoured a stretch of running water it was sharing with a family of grey wagtails. Martham Staithe empties into the River Thurne as it passes through the reed beds. Recently, environmental organisations have spent a great deal of time and effort improving water quality and have been rewarded with an improvement in the diversity and abundance of the wildlife. At one time, the great crested grebe was on the edge of extinction in Norfolk, as their feathers were used to decorate ladies' hats in Victorian times. They can now be found on most rivers and broads, and numbers are still rising. During the spring, watch out for their amazing courtship display as they dance across the water in tandem. The mute swan can be found on most inland waterways. The cygnets lose their grey plumage after the first winter. Norfolk has many rivers, including the Yare, Bure, Wensum, Thurne and Ant. This area at Earlham shows the River Yare, which has recently been improved to encourage the wildlife. It's a great community area and attracts dragonflies and damselflies as well as birds. Kingfishers are more common with improving water quality. Due to milder winters through the years, their numbers have steadily increased. The many old mill buildings in Norfolk have been converted into other uses. This one at Sculthorpe is a thriving Green King pub and is now a great place to spend a quiet evening watching wildlife. The landlord has a keen interest in wildlife and has good knowledge of the birds breeding in and around the grounds. While you're enjoying the peace and quiet, watch out for grey wagtails flitting around on the banks and sitting on the rock in the middle of the stream. The country park at Whitlingham Gravel Pits is now used by locals for water sports and country walks. And the regulars include gadwall, tufted duck, pochard, common tern, cormorant and many others. The brightly coloured Egyptian goose originated from a small population of captive bred birds 300 years ago, and they now thrive in Norfolk. They nest in holes in trees, sometimes fairly high up. Canada geese appear all over Norfolk. The gadwall looks grey, but when you look closer, you can see it has very striking markings, with fine barring and speckles. In flight, it has a white wing patch. They like to breed in the vegetation on the edges of gravel pits and lakes. The broadland landscape is unique, and it wasn't until the 1960s that it was discovered to have been made by medieval man digging for peat. These diggings later flooded to create the beautiful habitat we see today. They are all different, which provide a perfect environment to encourage both timid and common birds. The Great Northern Diver, or common loon, is the UK's largest diver. It is generally a winter visitor, but can sometimes occur on the coast during the summer. As with this particular bird, they can sometimes be found on reservoirs and lakes.
Gulls often meet in large numbers before roosting to preen and socialize.
This black swan is probably an escapee from a collection, but nevertheless a lovely bird to see. There are many scrapes available for wildlife in Norfolk, some along the coast and some near river and broad habitat. They are a good place to see waders and gulls all year round.
Hickling Broad and the surrounding reed beds provide an important habitat for breeding marsh harriers. The scrapes attract wading birds, and the tern platform is a safe place for breeding common terns to keep away from predators. The marsh habitat at Upton Fen is excellent for dragonflies, like this female black-tailed skimmer.
Sammy, the black-winged stilt, was first seen at Snettisham in August 1993, before making a more permanent home at Titchwell RSPB. A rare visitor to Britain, Sammy delighted visitors for more than 11 years until he disappeared in July 2005. The Wash is a stronghold for redshank, but they can be seen on most reserves with scrapes or mudflats along the north coast. The shoveler duck uses its wide beak to feed, sifting the water from side to side. This is a female bird, filmed along the North Norfolk coast, but the Yare Valley is also a good place to see them. There are not many breeding pairs of little ring plover in Norfolk, but watch out for them in odd places, such as sugar beet factories, and sometimes on the roof of a building. Look out for its distinctive yellow eye ring. Common terns occur across the county on broads, rivers and scrapes.
The largest duck in the British Isles is the shelduck, with striking markings and a large bright red bill. They breed in burrows underground, sometimes using disused rabbit burrows. This male shoveler is much more brightly colored than the female, but still has the broad shovel-shaped bill. A long red bill and distinct black and white markings identifies this oyster catcher, a fairly common wader found near the coast that is often seen feeding in large groups on arable fields.
The little gull is the world's smallest gull. They are mostly seen from June to October in small numbers around the coast, but some can be seen inland. Adults have a smoky black underwing, except for a white line around the trailing edge. Juveniles have a black W on the upper wing for the first 2 years. Black-tailed godwits can be found in coastal areas. They feed using their long bills to probe in the mud along the water's edge. They breed in water meadows and marshland, moving the chicks on very quickly after hatching. The wash is a particularly good place to see them.
Lapwing chicks learn to probe the mud with their feet very soon after hatching. As you can see, this gives the odd appearance of the head remaining still while the body moves. Some black-tailed godwits breed in East Anglia and can be seen on various freshwater scrapes throughout the year. They can easily be distinguished from bar-tailed godwits as they appear to have bold black and white wing markings visible in flight. If you see a godwit on the shoreline, it is more likely to be a bar-tailed godwit.
Two curlew sandpipers foraging for food in the freshwater marsh. Here you can clearly see a size difference between the sandpiper and the ruff. The sandpiper being half a size smaller than the ruff with a longer curved bill. A female ruff forages for food in the freshwater marsh before its long migration south. It's one of many stopovers from the breeding grounds in the Arctic.
This molting adult curlew sandpiper is also on its migration from its breeding ground in the Arctic, stopping over for a quick feed on freshwater lagoons before continuing to the wintering grounds in Africa. It can be hard to identify and pick out from the many dunlin.
There are over 700,000 dunlin wintering in Britain and can be found in virtually all coastal habitats. They are often very approachable as they run around in search of food. The little stint is a small wader found on scrapes in spring and autumn whilst on passage from the breeding grounds in the high Arctic. These juveniles clearly show a white V on the back, making them easy to identify. Golden plover nest throughout open moorland in England, Scotland and Northern Europe, and form large flocks, which can be found throughout Norfolk. They feed in open arable areas and like to roost in large numbers on freshwater marshes. Windbrell can be identified from curlew by the central crown stripe, which is clearly visible on this bird. A passage wader wintering in southern Europe and Africa. In July 2008, a small group of spoonbills, including 3 adults and 3 immatures, could be seen actively feeding and interacting on the various freshwater scrapes at Cly next the sea. It is only a matter of time that this species will become an annual visitor, which may possibly breed here in the future.
During the breeding season, the male ruff is transformed from dull brown to chestnut, black and white. They ruffle their feathers and posture to each other while the females watch and carefully choose the best display.
Cly is probably the most well-known nature reserve in Norfolk. attracting hundreds of visitors each year and is owned by the Norfolk Wildlife Trust. The new centre, opened in 2007, gives views across the reserve. The scrapes attract many waders, such as avocets, ringed plover and greenshank.
Arnold's Marsh off the east bank is a good area to see roosting sandwich, common and roseate terns.
The avocet was forced into near extinction in 1842 due to loss of wetland, but the first breeding pair returned to Britain in 1947 in Suffolk. Due to the help of conservationists, there are now 800 pairs. 65 of these bred at Titchwell RSPB. However, because of their increased numbers, they do tend to chase away other waders. Common sandpipers like freshwater estuaries and scrapes. Watch out for the continuous bobbing of the tail that distinguishes the sandpiper family. The lapwing is also known as the peewit due to its piercing call. They can be found mainly on farmland, such as pasture, root crops and fallow fields, but are equally at home on scrapes and mudflats. Cly and other reed beds across Norfolk are good habitats for the marsh harrier. It's the largest of the harriers, and the females have a creamy head. Due to the improvement in habitat, numbers have stabilized. The grey heron is the largest European heron. They can often be seen standing quietly watching over water. This one is obviously a little too close to a nest site and is chased off by the pursuing avocets. Most villages have ponds, which are great places to see moorhen, coot and ducks. Occasionally something unusual turns up to take a drink, such as a grey wagtail. The duck pond at Salthouse is famous for many rarities in the past, which have included laughing gull and little whimbrel. On a small pond on the Norfolk coast, a pair of ruddy ducks were happily posturing to each other. They came over from America in the 1940s, but there are now schemes afoot to cull them as they crossbreed with the white-headed duck. Sculthorpe Moor is a good example of well-managed reedbed and woodland habitat. This is a typical Norfolk habitat, which was in decline due to changes in management. There are several pairs of marsh harrier at Sculthorpe, with hides giving excellent views. One of the reedbed's most secretive inhabitants is the shy water rail. It is more often heard than seen, with a very loud, almost pig-like squeal.
feeders at Sculthorpe attract both male and female chaffinches.
The broadland areas are excellent for dragonflies and damselflies. Norfolk is the stronghold of the shy and elusive bittern. Out of 50 pairs in Britain, 37 are found in Norfolk and Suffolk. Breaches in the seawall along the coast threaten their habitat by flooding reed beds with salt water, which kills the food source of the bittern, freshwater fish. The ancient woodland of Wayland Wood is where the story of Babes in the Wood originated. The spring is a good time to visit for bluebells and early purple orchid. There is a small population of golden pheasant in the wood. This young great spotted woodpecker was just about ready to leave the nest when we found it nestling in a tree in a car park. They are usually found in mature woodland, but can be attracted to gardens with a good peanut feeder. The UK's largest finch can be difficult to see as it's shy and lives in mature deciduous woodland. The best place to see hawfinch in Norfolk is Linford Arboretum in the Brecks, but this individual took up residence in the grounds of the Eelsfoot pub in spring 2008. green and great spotted woodpecker can be heard calling as they fly through the woodland at Whitlingham Country Park, and tree creepers can often be seen near the small area of carnivorous woodland. The chiffchaff is one of the first migrants to return in the spring. It looks for woodland and gardens to reside in and can often be seen zipping through the air taking flies as it goes. It's a very active bird. Blue tits nest in holes in trees, walls or posts, and of course the garden nest box. They return each year to the same hole. Their main predators are grey squirrels and great spotted woodpeckers. This warbler is widespread and numerous in deciduous woodland throughout western and northern England. It is often seen on migration in North Norfolk in suitable habitat. The area around Kelling is often the wood warbler's choice. Numbers have declined in the last 25 years. Norfolk has good examples of carnivorous woodland, especially in the Thetford area. But small areas, such as this one at Wells, are also good spots to see birds. Being near the coast means it's a good place to check during the migration for rarities. There are 6 species of owl in the UK. The long-eared owl's population has halved since the 1950s, as their habitat of dense woodland near hedgerows has become harder to find. There are a few pairs in Norfolk, mainly in the Brecks. Heathland is a very important habitat for a variety of birds, including stonechats, yellowhammer, whitethroat and Dartford warbler. The heath at Kelling was a stronghold of Dartford warbler in Norfolk until the winter of 2008, when a great grey shrike took up residence and decimated the local bird population. The bright yellow gorse in spring provides a food supply for insects, which in turn feed many species of bird. The adder is the UK's only venomous snake, so it's always advisable to keep a safe distance if seen. They are cold-blooded and need to bask in the sun so they can digest their food. The brightly coloured yellowhammer is seen across Norfolk in hedgerows and near farmland, but may also be attracted to gardens in winter. There are several sites where they occur in large numbers, with flocks in winter reaching nearly 1,000 birds. From March to the end of August in the Brecks is the best place to see stone curlew. Norfolk Wildlife Trust Reserve at Weeting Heath is a perfect location with stony grassland and very short grass, which provides excellent breeding conditions. They share the site with hundreds of rabbits, which help maintain the short grass.
Arable fields easily hide breeding birds, as tall crops provide good cover. Farmers are now taking more care to allow the young to fledge before harvesting, to stop declines in species such as lapwing and marsh harriers.
Flocks of geese are a common sight on Norfolk's grazing marshes during the winter months. This group are mainly Brent geese, but if you look closely, you may find either black Brent or pale-bellied Brent. The overwintering population of pink-footed geese have been increasing unlike many other species. More than 150,000 have been wintering here along the North Norfolk coast and along grazing marsh around the Yare and Bure valleys. A small population of common crane was re-established in Norfolk in the 1970s, and the first chicks were raised in 1981. With their massive wingspan of 220 to 245 centimeters, they are easily spotted in flight near Horsey and Hickling and can often be seen grazing in the fields near Horsey Mill. The release of captive bred chicks is planned in 2009 to boost the sparse and vulnerable population. The whistling widgeon can be found in large numbers along the coast. They gather in winter on grazing marshes in huge flocks or coils of thousands, especially in the Yare Valley around Buckenham, Cantley and Shrumpshaw. Groups of wintering teal gather on flooded marshland such as Buckenham Marsh. It is the smallest duck and can often be mistaken for a wader in flight. It does most of its feeding at night.
This large rookery is always noisy with rooks and jackdaws. Large numbers return to roost before nightfall.
Whimbrel can be seen in the spring months, feeding in marshy grassland habitats on migration to their northerly breeding grounds. It's a close cousin to the curlew, the largest European wading bird, instantly recognized due to its long, down-curved bill. Common snipe are found in a variety of habitats and often seen in flight as they are flushed from wet grazing marsh. Ring ouzels are summer migrants, which pass through Norfolk on their way to breeding grounds in the mountain regions of England and Scotland. They are slightly smaller and slimmer than a blackbird, and the males are easy to spot with their vivid white chest band and pale wing panel. Rabbits are beneficial to the habitat of certain birds by keeping the length of the grass in pastures short to make feeding easy. A vulnerable species that occasionally appears with other flocks of geese is the red-breasted goose. This individual occurred in winter 2000 in flooded fields near Wells next the sea, amongst a flock of Brent geese.
This lesser grey shrike appeared at Hickling on a very windy day. It's a rare visitor from Europe that prefers heath and woodland habitat. During autumn months, large numbers fly back to Africa, passing over the Greek islands. They feed on insects and bees.
The corn bunting is the largest bunting and is often seen sitting on telegraph wires. Its dramatic population decline in recent years, due to farming changes, has seen it put on the red list. In summer, they like open farmland, but in winter feed from stubble fields. The Choseley drying barns near Titchwell is the best place in Norfolk to find this declining species. During the summer months, the call of "a little bit of bread and no cheese" is the distinctive call of the yellowhammer. Due to active shooting in Norfolk, pheasants can be seen on farmland just about anywhere. Goldfinches are sociable birds and often breed in close proximity to each other. They can be attracted to the garden bird table by putting out Niger seed, which is their favorite. Over the last few years, daffodils have become an important crop to Norfolk farmers. These fields provide excellent cover for birds such as pheasant, red-legged partridge, blackbirds and warblers. Turtle dove numbers are rapidly declining in the UK. They are mainly seen in southern England and are normally found on arable land close to woodland habitat. Their call is distinctive and often heard and not seen because of their secretive nature. Another common garden bird is the blackbird. They are very territorial birds and can often be seen chasing off rivals. Only the male is actually black. The reed bunting is an unusual visitor to a garden feeding station and likes to feed on seeds scattered on the ground rather than on the bird table. In January 2008, a very rare visitor appeared in a garden in Clyde next the sea. Mr. and Mrs. Bending found themselves besieged by thousands of birdwatchers anxious to catch a glimpse of this American sparrow. This male white-crowned sparrow was only the third in Britain, and people came from all over Europe to see it. During the winter months, brambling can be found near woodland or in fields and can sometimes gather in large flocks with chaffinches. Numbers are dependent on the yearly crop of beech mast, as it's their favorite food source. The marsh tit is unusual in that it sometimes hoards its food if it finds a good supply. It's not that easy to tell a marsh tit from a willow tit, but the willow tit has white wing panels and the marsh tit has a squarer tail. The calls are also different. Other garden birds to see are song thrush, house sparrow, and great tit. Collared doves are often seen in pairs as they mate for life and have only bred in the UK since 1955, so numbers have increased across Europe quickly. Feeding birds has become very easy, with a wide range of devices from the humble peanut bag to the sophisticated ones that repel squirrels. Peanuts attract house sparrows, siskins and blue tits. Black sunflower seeds are the favorite of greenfinches. Niger seed will attract goldfinches, and sunflower hearts, which have the highest calorific value, bring in the tit family and finches. A well-managed cemetery is a nature reserve on its own, and support is often given to local councils by the wildlife trusts to set up a management plan. Great Yarmouth has a very large cemetery, split into sections. Some is mown and some is left full of wild flowers in the summer. In the autumn and spring, migrants can often be found in the bushes and trees, such as yellow-browed warbler, Pallas's warbler and bearded tit. There is a good-sized colony or scurry of grey squirrels in the cemetery, and although some find them a nuisance, a regular stream of visitors, particularly at the weekend, can be seen feeding them peanuts. This brings us to the end of our look at Norfolk birds and habitats. Thank you for watching.